Moving into a new place should feel like a fresh start, but sometimes you're not the first one there. Story 1. The apartment was a steal, exposed brick, high ceilings, and a price tag that felt like an apology for the neighborhood's grit. When I moved in on a Tuesday, the air tasted of floor wax and stale dust. By Friday, the settling had begun. It started with the floorboards in the hallway. They didn't just creak, they groaned with a rhythmic, wet sound, like someone dragging a heavy sack across damp concrete. I dismissed it as old building blues, the thermal expansion of century-old pine. I unpacked my life into the hollow silence, filling the gaps with books and mid-century furniture, trying to make the space feel like mine. The unsettling part wasn't a ghost or a bump in the night, it was the ventilation. I'm a precise person. I like things balanced. On Sunday morning, I was cleaning the bedroom vents, removing the thick gray lace of grime that had choked the slats. As I unscrewed the metal grate, my screwdriver slipped, clattering into the dark, narrow throat of the wall cavity. I cursed, grabbed my phone's flashlight, and peered inside. The light cut through the gloom, illuminating the jagged, unfinished masonry of the interior wall. My screwdriver was lying on a ledge, but something else sat beside it. It was a Polaroid. I reached in, my fingers grazing the cold brick, and pulled it out. The image was grainy, yellowing at the edges. It showed the corner of my bedroom, the exact corner where my bed currently sat. But the room was empty of furniture. In the center of the frame, someone had drawn a tiny, precise red X with a ballpoint pen. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird. I flipped the photo over. Scrawled in fading blue ink was a date. September 14th, 1984. I stared at the spot on the wall. I hadn't been alive in 1984. I went to the living room, trying to steady my breathing, telling myself it was just a prank left by a previous tenant. A sick, historical joke. But as I sat on my sofa, the floorboards in the hallway groaned. Not the sound of wood shifting, but a deliberate, slow thud-drag, thud-drag. I froze. The sound emanated from the wall behind the radiator. I walked to the hallway, my footsteps muffled by the carpet. I pressed my ear against the plaster. There was no movement, only the faint, rhythmic sound of breathing. It wasn't my breathing. It was shallow, wet, and labored. Then, a vibration moved through the wall, rhythmic and insistent, as if someone, or something, was slowly scratching a tally mark into the lath and plaster from the other side. I looked down at the baseboard. A hairline crack was spreading horizontally, the paint peeling away like dead skin. Behind it, in the deep, lightless hollow of the wall, I saw a sliver of something pale, flat, and impossibly thin, pressing against the plaster, waiting for it to give way. I didn't pack. I just left. But as I grabbed my keys, I heard a soft, wet sound from the kitchen, the sound of a vent grate being unscrewed from the inside. Story 2. The lease for the apartment on 4B was a steal, largely because the previous tenant had left in such a hurry. My landlord, a man with yellowed eyes and a nervous tic, hadn't bothered to clear the place out entirely. He told me to just toss whatever was left in the dumpster out back. It was mostly junk, soggy cardboard boxes, broken hangers, and a collection of mismatched kitchenware. But behind the radiator in the master bedroom, I found the notebook. It was a dense, leather-bound thing, spine cracked from overuse. I intended to throw it away, but my curiosity flickered like a dying candle. I sat on the bare floorboards, the late afternoon sun casting long, sickly shadows across the room, and opened it. The first few pages were mundane, grocery lists, appointments, directions to a local pharmacy, but halfway through the handwriting changed. It became jagged, hurried, the ink pressing so deep into the paper it tore the fibers. The entries stopped being about daily life and started becoming a log of me. September 12th. The new tenant arrives. He has a habit of checking his watch when he's nervous. September 14th. He finally found the notebook behind the radiator. He is sitting on the floor, exactly where I used to sit. My breath hitched. I flipped to the back of the book, my heart hammering against my ribs. The last entry was dated today, September 15th. He is looking at the last page now. He thinks the silence in this room is normal. He hasn't realized that the silence isn't empty. It's just holding its breath. I froze. The apartment felt impossibly still, the kind of silence that doesn't just lack sound, but actively suppresses it. I looked up from the notebook, my eyes darting toward the corners of the room. The shadows seemed to have pooled deeper, viscous and heavy. A soft, rhythmic thud vibrated through the floorboards beneath me. It wasn't the sound of the old building settling. It sounded like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. I scrambled to my feet, the notebook slipping from my hands. As it hit the floor, a loose photograph slid out from between the pages. I picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a Polaroid, undeveloped and blurry, showing a view of the very spot I was standing in. But in the photo, the room wasn't empty. A pale, elongated figure was hunched in the corner, its fingers fused into the drywall, its face a smooth, featureless surface of gray skin. I looked at the corner of my bedroom. The drywall seemed to ripple, a silent distortion like heat haze rising from asphalt. The front door, which I knew I had locked, clicked. The sound of a metal bolt sliding back echoed through the hallway. The notebook lay open at my feet, and as I watched, fresh, wet ink began to bloom across the blank page, spelling out a single instruction: "Don't look back."